To Aware Project's Psychedelic Awareness Salon. I'm Ashley Booth. I'm the founder of the Aware Project, which got started at the beginning of this year. And the aim of the Aware Project is to connect the community here in Los Angeles, those that are interested in educating themselves about psychedelic medicines and psychedelics in general. And our goal here is to start changing the conversation about psychedelics, to become better ambassadors of the psychedelic experience to a broader community, and making sure that we're educating ourselves, being in integrity as we spread accurate information about these things. So I really appreciate you guys all coming here tonight. And so in the fall, there's going to be a really exciting conference called it's called the Visionary Congress. And a good friend, Sita, is putting that on, and that's going to be in the late fall here, and it's going to be a whole weekend of talks about psychedelic medicines, plant medicines here in Los Angeles. So you guys can find out about that on plantteachers.org, and we're supporting them in their endeavors to, again, spread more education. All right, with that, thank you all for coming, and I want to introduce Meriana. And we're just so thrilled that she could come down from San Francisco to give this talk. I got to meet her at the Women's Visionary Congress. What was that? Like over the solstice. And we just had a wonderful time together. I loved her talk. And then she just got back from London giving the same talk at Breaking Conventions, which is the biggest psychedelic conference in the world, I believe. So
it was huge, yeah.
Yeah, and we're just thrilled to have you here, and it's just been a wonderful becoming your friends. So
same thing. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you guys for coming. It's a pleasure. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Let me know if you have a hard time hearing me at some point, or if I get too excited and start speaking too fast. Can happen. And my accent is from Bulgaria. So I was originally born in Bulgaria, and I have been in the States for the last 15 years. And tonight I will be speaking about the system I have developed about navigating strong psychedelic experiences, and specifically ayahuasca. I know that I started, let me see, my first strong psychedelic experience was with 18, which I would say was 23 years ago, and my first ayahuasca experience was about 20 years ago. So I have a lot of experience with pretty profound states, and especially with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca has been one of my greatest teachers. Have you guys heard the expression about ayahuasca being psychotherapy and steroids? It is. And in some ways, I mean, I am a licensed psychotherapist, but it's been in some of the ayahuasca sessions of seeing what she can do when in the zone with her, and the kind of emotional and personality transformation that can happen. Like some of the things that I would almost call personality chiropractics. When she goes, this part of your personality is here, but it should be here, so crack. And this is here, but it should be crack. That emotional system, we gotta clean this thing. Where I was like, wow, I'm doing psychotherapy, but that's like the ultimate psychotherapy. And also in some ways, she can work on so many different levels. And people are told so little about how to be with the experience, what to do in the experience, how to hold themselves, and how to navigate it in a way that does not create potential negative trips. Because a lot of people who don't know what to expect can easily go into the what if, worst case scenario mind. And that one is probably one of your anti-wingmen when it comes to going into ayahuasca. And it's also up there, even often not told of the very basic things that you can expect in there. And some of them are pretty big, and I'm going to mention some of them. So I have partially developed a system to give people a little bit of a map of the different realms or the different places that they can expect to encounter, so that when they do, it's not a surprise, or that they're open, that they have an open mindset to how big this thing can be, as well as a toolbox. The ultimate tool is always surrender, yes. Surrender is the ultimate thing, that when the big intelligence of the plants and of they call her the grandmother, And I know that's starting to sound hippie, but in some ways, if you guys, for the ones of you that have a little bit of psychedelic experience, kind of the comparison a little bit is like if acid is like the chemical consciousness, which can be very divine if you're plugged in, but otherwise it's kind of like neutral. And it's more like that's you and that's your shit. Deal with it. And mushrooms are kind of more like the funny trickster that kind of has more of a lots of sense of humor that is like that's you and that's your shit and that's kind of funny. You know what I mean? So that gives you the allows like the sense if you can laugh about yourself unless you go to much higher doses where it gets serious. Ayahuasca is more like the loving grandmother. There is like this is you, but this is not all of who you are. You're much bigger than this, but now we're going to show you, and this is your shit. But this is just like, let me show you how to move through it and how to forgive yourself and which programs to shift so that you and your shit like go into alignments to the higher picture. So there is the sense of almost like a feminine presence that gives a shit, which is important. That's why they call her the grandmother or the great mother. And so some of the basic things that my system entails is also knowing some of her superpowers, which is in some cultures she's called the vine of the dead. Have you guys heard that expression about ayahuasca? And it is partially because she does have, I mean, the active ingredient is DMT, and the other plant has usually a MAO inhibitor. And depending of which shamans you drink with, they have different kinds of brews. Some of them leave it only with 2 plants, some of them add more. And one of the specialties that the DMT as well as the ayahuasca can give you the experience of going through the vial of death and back. So, and I only remember my very first shaman at my very first ceremony saying that, by the way, you might die, and if you die, go for it. I promise you will be back in the morning, but have the experience. Let yourself really smell the flowers, have the experience. I guarantee you will be back in the morning. And that's also the first ceremony I had in which I died. And it was amazing, it was natural, it was such a wide opening experience that took away so much of my fear of death. But if she wouldn't have said that it's a normal experience to have an ayahuasca and that it's not a, oh my God, you're gonna die, but it's more like cosmic jackpot, I'm gonna get to experience the death thing and come back and take notes. It's one of those things that since then I have drunk with so many shamans in so many continents and I have never heard another person say, by the way, if you start dying, go for it, you will be back. And I've seen so many people struggle and fight and spend half of the night trying not to die. Because they don't know that that's one of those experiences that she enables to kind of go through the gates and come back safely with so much knowledge to bring. And so many notes to take, so to say, and so many realms to visit in the process. But that was the first thing that I was like, I can't believe nobody's telling people that stuff. And then going to so many ceremonies with so many shamans, some of them only tell you the rules of the ritual, which is good. The ritual is one of the really important magical tools, so to say, of a good experience. But then when it comes to the experience itself, I hear things like, and you might have some visions, and you might feel some emotions. And then go into one of the strongest experiences of your life. So given that, and given that also that since I was a teenager, in some ways psychedelics have given tools to me that were almost like 1, 2, 3, 4, write it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, write it down. So I have notes with toolbox with 2 things developed over the years that at some point really became like a body of work that really needed to get out. And I felt almost selfish for if I don't do something with this, I'm not being a responsible mama. And also motivated by this and motivated by once I started first teaching the talks on navigating altered states and getting feedback of how much that was helping people, not just with ayahuasca, but with all kinds of altered state experiences. And also then starting to teach in Peru at the Shamanism Convention, and then I got inspired, and since 2013 I have been organizing retreats in Peru, which combination of my system. So we do the first 2 days is preparation, where I teach people a lot of the navigation tools. And then we do ceremonies. Usually there are 3 to 4 ceremonies in a week. Or one time I did a 10-day retreat, now in April, that combined the work of 3 different shamans. And that one was super powerful. That was one I did together with Rakrazam. And we had one indigenous Peruvian shaman. We had Ron, the Gringo shaman, Ron Willock. Have you guys heard of him? He's great. When I first saw him, I was like, he's a redneck. There is no way. He just probably is some expat that is like came to Peru, couldn't return, and decided to make a business of ayahuasca until I was drunk with him, and then I was like, okay, whatever, respect. And the third one was Borke, who is a psychic healer from Croatia, who I hope also to work again with, who had the ability to see if you have an entity picked up on you, if you have something, if you have like something from addiction, or if there is something from past trauma, if there is some emotional issues around grief. Like has the amazing ability to diagnose people and then use ayahuasca to clean out things from them. And my next retreat is going to be this December in Peru, in Tarapoto, with a shaman who is such an amazing musical wizard. So far, I have been doing retreats since 2013, and that's been 2 to 3 retreats a year. And that's the first time I'm coming back to work with someone, because he created such an amazing experience last December. And the retreats are, a part of it is about going in, the other part is about also exploring nature. So we're gonna have a kayak trip and a zip line trip included in the retreat, as well as sweat lodge. But let's go back to the navigation tools. I have different, what is it called? What I call navigating an experience is knowing, first is knowing also where you want to go. So having an intention is not always necessary, but it helps a lot. Because a lot of people go with, Mama, show me what you want to show me. Very, very valid. And there is also a place where this completely open-ended and take me where you need to take me. And sometimes there is something to be said about coming in with something that is really dear to you that you want to accomplish. And it was amazing, like the amount of people from the last retreat who learned how to love themselves. I mean, that was one of the ones that melted my heart. Like how many people realize that how they treat themselves and how they hold themselves, and how to really hold this one is more precious, and how to really take care of the being that we have like only less than 100 years to hang out with. And also what it means to be a human in so many ways. And yes, we come here flawed. We come here with all kinds of malware. And we can be so hard on ourselves over it. Usually also as a psychotherapist, one of the interesting things was to see how many people come in my office looking so together, looking so on top of their shit. And then you see how they treat themselves. And it starts getting, wow, if anybody else talked to you like that, you would punch them. But to see also how much pressure we also often put in ourselves, or how much criticism or how much anxiety we put in ourselves, that is, I call it almost emotional malware. And in, 1 second. So apart from navigation tools, between ceremonies, I also have workshops in which we get to know our types of emotional malware. So if it kicks in the ceremony, you can recognize it. If your MO is an inner critic, then we get to know it, we get to interview it in the workshops, so that if it's good, it can come in. And I have seen it in the beginning in some ceremonies when people really get really hard on themselves over something. So that you really get to know that program in advance. So when it comes up, you can go like, oh, that's just you. We already got to know you today. We know how you roll. Because usually those programs are not very intelligent, and they don't know you very well, but they sound like the word of God in your head. Or that inner paranoid, they call it the paranoid or the worst case scenario voice. What if I go crazy? What if I never come back? What if that's it? So what if I really this time completely like burned it and now I'm gonna be crazy forever? Oh my God, that's so strange. What if I never ever come back to ground zero? That's gonna be probably, I'm gonna be here forever. Oh no, that's gonna be the beginning of my psychotic break. And so on and so on and so on. So this is usually also a pretty predictable program that is very creative and goes to worst case scenarios. But if you don't know it and recognize it, it can create a bad trip sometimes, just because things are being different and you don't know. So with some of the participants in my retreat, I almost make an agreement. If you think you might not come back, don't be afraid. If the sun comes out and you still feel that way, then be afraid. You know, usually that never happens, but then everybody has come back. But almost to have like negotiations with the fear programs. So to not completely say your fear is not valid, but to make a condition. If this happens and it's still going on, then you have valid reasons to be afraid. So far that's never happened. But it's some of the navigation tools. So navigation is also knowing where you want to go, which comes with the intention. And I help people custom craft intentions depending on where exactly they are and what are they bringing. Some people bringing healing, some people bringing spiritual development, or just kind of wanting to widen their framework about what are we and what is this whole big matrix all about. And some people are coming also for physical things, some people are coming for emotional things or for purpose-related things. So depending also, and it's very powerful to have an intention, because sometimes that's the thing that you keep bringing into the trip. And ayahuasca is pretty amazing on showing sometimes so many things. And for me, usually either the beginning or the end, she goes like, oh yeah, that thing about your intention, here you go. Not always, because sometimes she can also go like, no, that's your intention, but actually what we need to work on today is this other thing. Cool. And then the next session she goes, okay, now we can pick up your intention from last time. So just because you have an intention doesn't mean it's necessarily that's what's going to get worked on, but it's also a really powerful tool to have. And also how to word the intention in a way that gives you the highest chances to get what you want. So that's also, it's very powerful when I sit with people and I hear their intention, then we work with it, and often they walk out with a very different intention. Because if the intention is show me why I'm so afraid, but the real desire is show me how to be free of fear, or how to be living in with self-confidence and peace in a peaceful way. So sometimes also people come with the intention that is not really the end result they want, and then it's really powerful how to craft it in a way that is going to what they really want and not just removing some symptom, and also how that it's worded in a way that has the biggest power of attracting it. Because there is this thing of the unconscious does not understand negatives. Have you heard it? Heard of that? That if you say, show me how not to be miserable, the unconsciousness hears miserable, miserable, miserable. So intention is one of those things. Then another part of navigation is knowing how to prevent obstacles on the way to where you're going, as well as knowing how to optimize and create shortcuts to where you're going. And that's also another thing that sometimes once we're deep in the space, it becomes, the different tools work for different amount of how deep you are. So because some journeys are very, very light, and then you barely get some visuals, or that you get some sense of it, but she can be like a woman when sometimes she teases you, but she's not gonna let you in. And sometimes another time you might drink a third of that amount and she comes full on. So it's a little bit unpredictable. But so some of it is about how to interact with the space. And for example, those ones, they work once it's a little deeper, and once you're a little deeper in the experience. And that's also another thing that people seldom taught, that you can actually almost ask for what you want in the space. It's a little bit like The Matrix. Have you guys watched that part of The Matrix where he's running towards the helicopter and he doesn't know how to drive it? And he goes, okay, I need a download for how to drive helicopter Beta Alpha 23. Bzzz, download complete, and he jumps in and he knows how to drive it. So it's a little bit like that, but in different ways when it comes to the deeper psychedelic realms. And that's when you can ask for things sometimes like you can ask for abilities, like show me how to be with this, or show me how to do this, show me how to feel this experience of grief over something in a way that doesn't hurt me or doesn't overwhelm me. Show me how to have a volume button on the experience. It doesn't always work. That's why it's good to have multiple tools. So if one is not responding straight away, you can have another one. But for a lot of people, it's very new that you can even ask ayahuasca to slow it down, or to speed it up, or to make it so that you can digest it a little better without like getting it all at once. Or so again, you can ask for abilities, like show me how to do something. Show me how to go to this place from where I can handle it in a better way. or show me how to be able to be with this experience in a place with peace and grace. And it's almost like the way they say the unconscious is like a dog. If you throw it a bone, it's gonna go get it. So be careful what bone you throw it, because a lot of people go in there and go like, show me why is it that I never find love and I'm always so miserable. Horrible thing to put in the cosmic Google. Because then the whole universe starts looking for evidence why you're going to be miserable and not find love or something. So it's also a lot of the time we bring there our pain, and so also it's the difference between why questions and how questions. I would, in general, not always, there is place for why questions, but it's much smaller than how questions. And also, if you have noticed, almost like with couples, when somebody goes, it's like, why is it that you're always late, and why do you never pay attention to me, and why is it always that you're so full of your own work and you're not there for me? This is not a real question. You know what I mean? This is already bitching. So it's also very often when people go in ayahuasca space or in a deep altered state or psychedelic space with going like, why is it that I never, and why is it that I always blah, blah, blah. This is not really asking the medicine. This is kind of more bringing your pain body and magnifying it and kind of giving it more energy in a direction you don't really want to go. So also be really careful when you go into making statements or asking questions that either see you as limited and broken, like why is it that I can never get what I want, why is it that I can never pass certain point of blah, 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 because then you're already enforcing a magic of being limited or broken, or that sees the world and the universe as limited or broken. Why is it that people don't like me? Why is it that women never want to be with me? Or why is it that blah, blah, blah? Because that's kind of more also almost like the anti-magic. That's magic going the other way around. But how questions are more like, show me how to be more open to love. Show me how to be the kind of person that people would naturally want to be with. Show me how to put myself out there that naturally attracts the kind of person who will be really good for me. Show me how to listen to my inner voice in a way that puts me in those such situations, and how to show up with people that hold that resonance. So now we have a whole different, so that's that whole direction of magic going the other way. And there was that tale one time of the boy comes to the Indian chief and go like, they had this dream, and it was these two wolves, one white and one black, and they were fighting. And the chief goes, yes, this was the good forces, the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And they were fighting. And the boy goes like, so which one is going to win? And the chief goes, whoever you feed more. So that's the thing, is often we can go in a deep psychedelic experience and feed the dark wolf of everything that's wrong with us, of all the trauma, of all the times when it didn't go there, and so on and so on. And there is place to go into difficult experiences. So I'm not saying avoid difficult experiences, because also there is a lot of healing that happens in the very places of pain. But also knowing which experiences and knowing how to feel out, and in my retreats I teach people how to feel out when to go into a difficult experience and how to resource yourself. That's a part of navigating. If you're gonna go climb a big mount, how to resource yourself to bring warm clothes, how to have the right shoes, how to have the right equipment. So that when you go to the place, how to have the right troops on your side. So that when you go to the places where it's hard, that you know how to handle it, that you know who to call in for support, and you know also how to be in a way that this thing does not re-traumatize you, but it can be a real opportunity for healing. And again, you can ask for abilities, you can ask for results. Sometimes you can go for show me how to do it. Sometimes you can go for just do it for me, which is a little bit of a shortcut. And also you can go to, and for example, asking for results would be like, show me what it's like to be in a place of full self-confidence. And sometimes you can go, oh, you want to know that? And then almost another thing is going, okay, show me how to live from now on from here. So this is already when, that's an integration trick, that when you do get in touch with one of those really grounded, really expanded states, almost to push the button on slow release from now on. Like when you do go to a place of deep self-love, or to a place of confidence, or to a place of connectedness, to not go like, wow, cool experience, but go, okay, make that a part of how I roll in the world from now on. Make that a part of my core identity from now on. So you kind of grab the state and make it into basic hardware from now on. So a lot of people teach integration after the experience, but some of the integration techniques I teach it from the experience itself on. And then there is also work we can do after. And another one of the things that very seldom are taught, so much power is given to the Mother Ayahuasca, and yes, it's beautiful to trust her as a teacher and a guide, and she does show up in amazing ways. And so much power is given to the shaman and how powerful they are and how long they've worked and their tradition and so on. And so little power is given to our own inner shaman, that we all come with our own wisdom, our own connection to the divine, our own template for our perfect health, for example. Our own higher self that knows much more than any other forces about what it takes to make this one happy, or what it looks like for this mark and model to be in a perfect wholeness or in a equilibrium. So some of the questions to ask would be also like, bring me to the part of myself that already knows how to do this. Or bring me to the part of myself that knows how to be with this difficult experience in the most healing way. Or bring me to the part of myself that knows how to be with such a strong, or like almost overwhelming psychedelic experience in a way that is with ease and grace. And then this little Jedi usually comes out of you and goes, okay, you're calling for me? Cool. And it can be so surprising. Like when I taught that at the breaking convention, I had somebody come the next day almost like, oh, like you have no idea. Just that one tool that you taught about like asking for the part of ourselves that already knows how to do it. I took mushrooms that night and I asked for him and he came. He was so amazing and I cried. Because it's so often we forget how to ask for our own, higher self implies almost as if higher is higher outside of you, but this is kind of more the deeper self, because we all come with all the formula that the divine already has in some ways, and we can turn for guidance in as much as out. And sometimes it's really powerful to turn to the shaman within, or the knowledge within, or the God within, because we do have all the right connections. And some other ones of the tools are also how to use the archetypes of your own culture tradition, of your own. And we all come here from different ages. We grew up on different TV shows with different religious things, and so on. I know that, for example, for me, what was it? The state was communist, so religion was not allowed. My grandmother was Greek Orthodox. I think she became more religious towards the end, just in case. And my dad was the absolute, how call it, when they don't believe in anything. Not quite nihilist, more like, what is it called? Atheist, exactly. My mom was a Buddhist. So it was like pick and choose. But in some ways, I know that when I first started going to drink with shamans, and for example, the first big retreat I did in Peru many years ago, they were calling on the spirit of the ocean. They were calling on Yemanja, which is the goddess of the water, the oceans. They were calling on Oshun, who is the god of the rivers, and so on. And for them, those things were so meaningful and were bringing so much resource. I had just heard of them. Or going to a tipi ceremony where they're calling for the spirit of the bear, and you're like, yeah, I've seen a bear in a zoo. Then they start calling for the spirit of the eagle, and I'm like, yeah, that one time I saw an eagle, but there is no way I'm feeling protected by those things. So I help also people to come up with their own inner archetypes and the things that really they're connected to. For some people, that might be their grandmother. For somebody else, that might be Buddha. For somebody else, that might be Bruce Lee. And usually we have like different, we have in some of the workshops, we have days in which you pick different archetypes. You need somebody to come in and take care of stuff. I call them the bouncer archetypes. Like who would come to mind? And it's okay, you can have multiple things there. For example, you can have that big bad coach that you had in middle school that everybody was afraid of. And you can call him in the space. Or you can have like Hanuman, who can come in and fuck shit up for you if you need to. Or for example, there was like somebody who had mostly really negative ayahuasca experiences, because also he was seeing ayahuasca as this dome that is gonna be punishing him for all the bad things he's done in the meantime. So there is also how we view the medicine and how we view the whole process. Do we view it as something that is friendly, that wants the best for us and will help us to grow and heal, or is it gonna be this force that's gonna spank us for everything bad we've done in the meantime? So it's also really important the cognitive context you hold, but also like knowing how to resource yourself. So for that particular person, when they got my tools and they went to the ceremony afterwards, and it started getting dark, and he called Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was one of his bouncers archetype. Bruce Lee took care of business. He had one of the best trips ever. Afterwards, he was like, wow. Another one is, so it's good also to have archetypes for emotional support, because sometimes you go in places that you really, you either can be really sad, and sadness can be beautiful. Again, just because you see somebody sobbing for an hour and a half in the ayahuasca ceremony or in any psychedelic experience does not mean they're having a bad trip. Because that's so often, I've learned that what people look like and what people are experiencing and saying in the morning can be so different. They can be wailing and you're like, poor you, and in the morning they're like, oh my God, I finally like relieved this from my heart that I've been carrying for years, and I was finally able to grieve this thing that I have not been grieving forever, that was inhibiting my ability to love, and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, wow, that what I thought was a bad trip was actually you ejecting the pain of a decade or something. So sometimes also going into negative experience is good, but also like if you go to parts where you have a hard time loving yourself there, it's good to have almost archetypes that are more about emotional support. Like for some people that's Kuan Yin, for some people that is a friend, or the green Tara is one that people use a lot. But to have again something that is almost bigger than you, and it can be a grandmother. Again, for some people spiritual, some people call their cat, because the cat loves them no matter what. And then when they do go to a place where it's hard to access self-love, because sometimes the lessons can be about, here you abandoned yourself and you are not quite there for yourself. And that's not like, and now you get your spankings, but more like how to learn to love yourself better. And sometimes that involves grieving the parts that were abandoned, but also how to call in on these archetypes of bigger love and bigger ability to hold you emotionally, to hold space for the process of forgiving yourself and for the process for reconnecting with those parts. And some awesome other archetypes that are really useful are just kind of big divine wisdom. Like a lot of people pick Buddha there, some people pick the Tao itself. Sometimes I also use Jesus, because I didn't grow up Christian, so Jesus is not the jealous God that's gonna can't tolerate me working with other ones, but he's kind of more of a healer archetype. So sometimes I have called on him to do particular healing with emotional parts of me, where if I get in touch with parts that have been from my past that have been deeply hurt, and I'm like, okay, I might not know what to do with this, you know. And it's been amazing sometimes what healing things he would perform, so to say. I mean, I don't want to say that's Jesus, but when you call on a particular intelligence, you can call it Jesus, you can call it whatever makes sense to you, that brings the sense of a big healing intelligence that is bigger than you and has the knowledge base and the skill set that you need. And sometimes it's good to almost leave it open. I remember one time ending up in a realm that was very alien. It was like one of those deep DMT realms, and I was not equipped to be there at that time. I remember going there, it was a different time. I was not fully on top of my skill sets, and going, oh shit. So now I'm here like deep into the psychedelic kitchen, and I'm like, I can barely drive my spaceship, so to say. And the beings in that realm started laughing and going, dude, you need to download someone here. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I started going, so should I go for like Papaji or Babaji or Osho? Where I started thinking of like enlightened masters and people from the background from the different ashrams, and they started laughing harder, going like, seriously, you want to download a human for this? I'm like, good point. So and then sometimes it's okay to have open-ended questions. I want to call in somebody who knows how to do this. In that case, it was like a local, and who can work with my nervous system and has my best interest in mind. So sometimes it's good to know who you want to call in, but sometimes if you don't quite know, you can still just call in for something or somebody who knows how to do this. And in that case, it was like a greenish, female-ish thing with tentacles on her head that came in, jumped into me, took care of it, like bang. And with things like that, it's also good to have a until the job is done, and then thank you very much, kind of a contract, so that there is also a thank you and goodbye now. Or you can only leave the parts in me that are in my best interest from now on. Because it's also, you don't want to invite forces that you don't have an expiration contract with sometimes. Any questions so far? Because I'm going to keep going. Okay. Yeah?
Well, at certain points during the journey, I don't feel conscious enough to maybe even make that request to call on your guide. How do you find the strength or the ability to do that? How do you summon this guide?
That's why it's good to have them in advance. No, exactly. That's why it's good to have them in advance, because sometimes if you're in the situation you have to think of who you need right now, it's way too late. I mean, it's hard to even think. And again, there is different tools work for different levels of how deep in the trip you are. And there are also some levels of depth that, no. I remember with one of the participants of my retreat that was like really, really deep into the space. And people were going like, how comes you vomited there and not in the bucket? And she's like, at that point, honestly, I was like, what is bucket? So what is a guide? You know what I mean? But also in some of those things, like it's sometimes in those spaces almost what you can call in is just very basic words, and the words work. Even if you just go love, 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 or love and light, love and light. I know that that one sounds hippie, but in those spaces having like, it's almost like mantras. And some people go for the mantra. So if you have good connections with mantra, go for it. Another one it is because you can also call for words that hold a particular vibrational frequency. Like one of them is, they call it the 4 pillars, which is self-love, forgiveness, compassion, and what was the 4th one? Self-love, compassion, forgiveness. Huh? Gratitude, yes, thank you. So that, for example, is those 4 that if you just continue repeating them in succession, they raise the emotional vibration to a particular level. Then you can also, I have played with it, you can go for clarity, 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 or you can go for grounding, 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 grounding. You know what I mean? And you can just calling for the quality that if it was there, it would help you with the experience. And then that already makes a big difference. Or also knowing that sometimes if things come up, the best, again, it's not that you have to avoid difficult experience, because some flavor for difficult experience are very much where you need to go and what you need to experience. But sometimes also there are things that come and they're just kind of feels like, no, thank you, I don't want to go that road. So to even know that sometimes you can go, thank you, but no, thank you. It's kind of important. Like sometimes there have been trips where these almost monsterish things start coming, but they're more like in this like made of floral things, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to meet you. And knowing that, like with things like that as well as with emotions, and that the emotion part is true for psychedelic experience as well as for life. You have 20-something seconds to change the channel. After 20-something seconds, it's in your blood. So if you scare yourself for 20-something seconds, or if you follow, what if I get fired, and what if this thing, and then what if my boyfriend leaves me, what if I blah, 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 for 20-something seconds, then enough secretion has come out of the glands that it's in your blood. And then it's going to take you 15 minutes of not doing this for it to leave your blood. If you continue the story, you can keep it for the rest of the night, for the rest of the week, for the rest of the year. So there is also to know that there is this like window of prevention, because I teach also people how to deal with really difficult emotions once they're already there. But sometimes there is also the power of prevention. If it feels like it's going to be one of those that it's not about healing, but that it's more like some place that is opening up and it's more about scary versus like the kind of fear that it's about healing someplace in you, then how to also know like, no, I'm not going to give you my attention. Or like in that case with the monster things, they couldn't get to me because I was like, no, I'm not going to engage you. Sorry, I'm going to go some other places right now. And there is also sometimes you can meet, so to say, entities, and there is, of course, in the Breaking Convention, it was so cute about like the DMT entities, and there were many talks about the DMT entities, and are they real, are they a fraction of our imagination, are a fraction of ourselves in a different plane, and blah, 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 and how somebody was going like, a pixie doesn't want to have a conversation with you about its ontological validity. And it's like, or who was saying like one of the great minds who had a dream about his father and so on, and he was going like, so is it that this a part of myself that was being the father, or am I a part of this thing being the dream? Was like, no, I should just hear like what he has to say, huh? Like, so there is also, apart from what is real and what is not real, there's also what to do with it. Because sometimes there are things that show up as beings, so without going, are they beings, are they not beings? Because this is not for me to tell you, and there is almost like we do have a particular sense. If there is that's something, that's something, that's something, that's something, that's somebody. Have you guys had that on some psychedelic trips or in some kind of altered states where it feels like something, 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 oh, that's a somebody. That's a somebody with interactive abilities versus just another something. So there is also sometimes also how to interact with those entities. Again, without saying that they exist, without saying whether they're real, but if you do encounter them, how to have a proper code of conduct, and as well as how to know of when to engage and when not to engage, and if you engage, how to almost put the right shields that only the parts of you that are in my best interest and in my highest good can enter, and how to almost know how to call in the shields and how to create the right protection with certain realms so that you're not fully exposed, but you can still interact, and you're not fully walled off, so that there is interchange, like permeable thing of shields in a way. Any other questions? Because I'm going to keep talking, but I know that I'm making big jumps and big parts of the information. Yeah? Yeah. Depending on the entity, because sometimes you meet these glorious forces that are almost like angelic entities that are like there is like, oh, thank you for coming to visit. You know what I mean? And then, for example, some of the tool is like stay in relationship with me from now on, like make it so that I can call on you from now on, because sometimes we go to divine realms where it feels like the entity is that we meet there was like, oh, that's what they were probably meeting when they were saying angels. You know what I mean? Then you want to then you want to go hashtag stay on my team. And then sometimes you can call on them when you go into dark, because sometimes, for example, I've had more encounters with entities that felt like, okay, you're dark, I can see you're dark, and I can see you're interesting. I don't want you to go away. I want to hang out with you, and I want to learn some of your magic, but I need divine supervision, so to say. So if I'll call on Jesus or somebody else going, can you like oversee this interaction? Because I don't want them jumping on me, but they got something. Like, and I want to be able to learn that something, but I need like adult supervision in some ways. Or sometimes also, like, so to say, as some of the other entities, like they can be more monster or non-monster looking, because again, some of them are just kind of very they can come in all kinds of shapes and forms, but one of the ones that I work with is that if you as entity were able to come into my perceptual field, means we have somewhere a frequency in which we are one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to encounter. If we have a frequency in which we are one, that means if I tune to that frequency, you cannot attack me, because then it's like the hand attacking itself. And not only you cannot attack me, but I can hack you, and I can get your keys. So there was also like one of the ones I came up with was like, show me what it's like to be you. Which was, and then I remember that this thing opened its mouth, I jumped in, we had this interchange. So it was kind of almost neutralizing the charge. So there is no anymore two opposing forces, there is one field, and I can kind of, we can merge informational fields. Another one that I learned from a Peruvian guy who was selling things in Iquitos and who had a hard time getting to it. Like his parents were forcing him to do ayahuasca. He did 6 times, couldn't feel anything, but the 7th time, there was this big monster that jumped on him and started hounding him, so he kind of attacked the monster back, and the monster was like, whoa, never mind. So there was also this whole saying that some entities come for healing, and they actually want your love to heal them. Some just come because they're curious, just to check it out. And also, but if they charge it, you charge back. So, or there is also a place to call for your protection and to call for your bouncers to take care of them, so to say. But it's important because sometimes the forces we meet are like, you can meet God or you can meet divine forces. And then you almost want to do the same thing, show me what it's like to be you, and exchange codes. You know what I mean? So it's not only you go, oh, beautiful divine part, but go like, also show me which part of me is you. You know what I mean? So you almost kind of log in and hack and read their system or their information field. And also I have a lot of techniques of how to deal with when you go into really difficult emotional experiences, and that's where a lot of the transpersonal tools come really handy. Like when you're dealing with something that brings up a lot of grief or a lot of emotional pain, and sometimes it's almost like opening a cyst that for a minute you have to be with the pain underneath it, you know what I mean? But there are also tools of how to be with it in a way that is much easier to be with. You can ask for the volume button to go down. You can ask for, can you slow that down, or can you make that, can you give it to me in a way that I can handle with ease and grace? It knows what it means by ease and grace. Or if that's not happening, you can also go into the witness. I remember the first time that happened, I was in an experience that was dealing with such an amount of emotional despair and pain, and it was almost really hard to hold in my system. And then going to this transpersonal tool, where going like, wait, I invited this, and I am not the emotional thing. I am the consciousness container that is experiencing the emotion. So I remember going almost from being the movie, I became the screen in which the movie is being projected. The screen could handle horror movies, porn, whatever. The screen could handle all kinds of content because it was just like experiencing the emotion, the flavor of, oh, that's what despair feels like. Not like, and that's not fair, no, and oh my God, why to me? None of that. It was just kind of is consciousness perceiving an experience. Another one with a really strong emotional experience can be just feeling them as sensations. So you unhook from the story, you unhook from the poor me, you unhook from the what does that mean? Does that mean I'll never come back, or from now on, blah, blah, blah. And you just feel, what does that feel like as sensations? And usually when you stay with it for up to 15 minutes, it starts shifting. Because we know how to be with sensations. And especially because a lot of the times we have the primary emotion and the secondary emotion. Primary emotion is what we feel. That thing is made to shift in 15 minutes. And the secondary emotion is how we feel about what we feel. So if this is sadness, we can feel sad about feeling sad. We can feel angry about feeling sad. We can feel scared about feeling sad, and so on. And it's usually the secondary emotion that makes it hard to just really cleanly process this thing. So also I help people differentiate. And also in the workshops in between, we're gonna go through like much more getting a diagnostic to where in your life would it make the most sense to work on. Because again, we go through, is it in your romantic life? Is it in your relationship to yourself? Is it in how you work with people? Is it in how you roll through your career? Is it the one part has completely like overtaken the rest part and you've turned to a workaholic who doesn't have a life? Or is the part of you that is so about survival taken over that some emotional parts are not getting to play? So it's about like how to become a more whole, happy, playful human being in a way. And also for people who cannot come to my retreats, I also have, I do work on Skype. So we can do preparation and integration sessions on Skype. And I love doing this with people from all over the world, where we get to individually see what are the best intentions and what will be the best tools for you to use, knowing your intentions and where you tend to go. And then afterwards we do integration. Because integration is super important. And I don't think I'm going to get to talk about some integration tools today. How much more time we have? 5 more minutes? Maybe. But it's also how to make those experiences one of your best friends. Because when you do have certain experiences, how to know how to call on them. Because your body was there. All your cells were there. So to know how to call on the version of you who had that experience and bring it into the now as your healer, as your guide, as your best friend. Not as something you experienced one time when you were tripping out in the jungle. There was a question there.
It's a two-part question. First thing is the times that I've sat, the groups keep getting bigger, and I have a really hard time with all the energy in the room and all the other people having their experience, and I'm resisting like sitting anymore because I can't handle like being in large groups. And what I want to know is, what do you have to say about that when you're in more than like 15 to 40 people? And then I have a friend who's been getting the medicine, and she's been doing ceremonies with smaller groups, but she's not like I don't see her as a shaman. She's my neighbor who's traveled with other shamans. She lived in Peru for a month. She's sat dozens of times and has a deep understanding and connection with medicine. But I just don't know. So I'm kind of caught in this 22 of do I have these experiences again, or do I just kind of...
To that second question, I mean, the way they explain it in Peru is that there are ayahuasqueros and there's curanderos. Ayahuasqueros give you the medicine and make sure you don't hit yourself. And give you the medicine, make sure you don't hurt yourself and sing music. Curanderos are the ones who have the abilities to do healing. So curanderos are more people who they do usually have done much more work, and they have dieted in a bunch of plants, and they have worked with the lineages, or they also come with certain powers of healing. And that's the people who can also not only just make sure you're safe, but actually like go in there and help with your personal healing. There will be these 2 grandmothers, which I'm really curious to work with at some point next year. And that retreat is not on my website yet. So there is this coming one in December, who is going to be with a very special shaman in Tarapoto. There is another one who's going to be probably in June with 3 different shamans, if everything happens. That one is not fully set in stone, that the dates might change, but I'm going to keep you guys updated. And there might be one with those 2 grandmothers too, because it was amazing with Borka. She could read people and heal. You know what I mean? With Ron, he had a whole specific healing rituals for certain things, where he'll call the people in who needs for certain healing and do this whole thing in them. And also with the grandmothers that I've heard, for example, that they're like one of them going, oh, this woman, and I can see she's in so much pain because she's had 3 abortions and the babies are not happy, the babies are still there. That's why she's going through so much. And the friend who is going to help me organize the retreat was going, should I tell her? She's like, no, don't tell her. And at the end of the retreat, the woman going, I know why I was going through so much. I've had 3 abortions and I could feel the babies, blah, blah, blah. And he could see how the curandero would be sitting there singing to the spirits of the babies to leave and to kind of forgive. And so there is also people with powers who do know how to read and how to work with the material, apart from just make sure you don't hit yourself in the wall. I'm not saying, but I mean, I don't know how much experience your neighbor has, but it sounds, because good intention is a lot. And again, ayahuasca comes with an inbuilt shaman. I've been to circles where the shaman is so obviously, for example, a white woman, full of ego up to here, control freak, and it's like me and ayahuasca against the shaman, a little bit, going like, yeah, I know, we can pull this together. But as the big groups go, it was interesting also. My groups are usually to between 12, 15 people, sometimes 20, because it starts getting bigger, as you were saying. It doesn't even have to be, honestly, it can be a small group. It takes one person to start getting really loud. It is a practice to stay in your own experience. And I noticed, for example, also it did depend on the kind of space the shaman holds. Like in the last retreat, the 10-day retreat, the first shaman was very like anything goes. And anything was going. People were being loud, people were getting kind of, parts were taking over, they were like, not even scary, but loud. The second shaman was like almost, none of that shit in my Malacca. I mean, almost not to the people, but it was silence. Because also at least one of the women was going, I don't know, how can I do? There were all these people, there were all these loud things. So we told him, and he held almost the kind of that, you're not gonna fuck with me. You're gonna shut up and be neck. And it was interesting. From then on, it was silence. So almost like the people's unconscious parts felt they could get away with it in the first 2 ceremonies with that shaman, they could not get away with it afterwards. And it was amazing how it went from like this place where at least 2 to 3 people were going through the process loudly to this place where nobody was. So I hear you in both, but there is also a place about staying centered in your own process even when somebody's going through something. So, and there is also a place where sometimes even you can send them healing energy or just call in their guides and leave it there. And the meditation of how much can I stay present with myself there. And because very often there is none of that. But sometimes it can happen. It can happen in very small group too. Like I've been to a ceremony. It was 5 people, no, 6, 7 people. 4 of them got possessed, including the shaman at the end. And it was a Western shaman. So also the size does not always necessarily matter. But that's why it's good to work with people that know how to work with the space too. Any other questions? By the way, I have given you guys forms. I'm gonna pass them again. Just in case, because I know that not everybody filled them. So this is also for my Peru retreats. I have one in December. Is there a pen? Can I have another pen? I have one in December from the 13th to the 20th, and Act Fast discount just expired. So for you guys, if somebody wants to jump on board right now and tomorrow, I can extend it to tomorrow night, which was $14.95 for the whole week, which includes lodging, food, the ceremonies, optional master plan dieta, the workshops, yoga classes, and so on. You can ask me more questions about it. If you haven't put your email on my list, feel free to do it on this one. And I also offer short consultations, can be over Skype, or I might be even back here this weekend checking out an office because I'm considering moving to LA. Because I love it. So some of them might be also in person, but I also see people over Skype. So it can be about preparation, integration work. It can be about anything. I do a lot of relationship coaching. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I do dating coaching. So feel free to, if you're considering working with me, if you feel a resonance, feel free to get in touch with me. It's easy if you reach out to me than if you wait for me, because right now I've been super busy, but otherwise you'll hear from me anyway. Yes?
Yeah, Meriana, I just have one like kind of personal question for you. Are your ayahuasca experiences like pretty smooth sailing now? Like, do you feel like they're pretty easy or
Yeah.
consistently? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you feel like you've mastered these tools enough that you can kind of navigate any experience with these?
I don't want to say forever and ever and however, but there is also, because also when it starts getting difficult, there is something about asking for the part of you that knows how to be with it in a way that doesn't hurt. If it starts going to places where you have a lot of emotional grief, I mean, easy can still look like me crying for an hour, but that's in sometimes it's like letting go of things that needed to be grieved or needed to be felt in order to really let go of them.
Or just totally overwhelmed by the experience anymore?
And I remember one time when I was so overwhelmed, it was like with my ex, when I did this ayahuasca that was supposed to be the strongest ayahuasca ever, was the intention of the shaman. Horrible intention, but it was. So when it was like, usually I want to get into one parallel reality and one other realm. So this one was like, oh yeah, what you going to do with 150 of them at the same time? But then I could have A, freaked out, B, asked what to do. So I was like many realms at the same time, and that thing came in and showed me how to do it. So that's the thing, is the most important tool is to remember to use your tools. And if you're going through a situation, ask for what would be the one ability that would make it easy, that would make it doable. And be then open to receive, because it was like a shimmering thing. I logged into it and was like, oh, that's how you serve 150 dimensions at the same time. Cool. So in some ways, I was so far, knock on wood. Yes.
One more question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder, do you have any experience with peyote, and how would you tailor your navigation tools that you taught people today with the peyote experience?
I have had one experience with peyote, and it was not strong enough. So I had some emotional healing experiences, but I would not say I went as deep as ayahuasca. I've had multiple experiences with San Pedro, and the tools were extremely applicable. The tools are even applicable on, I know that people who heard my talk on Burning Man afterwards wrote me this big thing about, oh my God, I did MDMA and I used this and this tool, and magic happened beyond what I would have imagined. So I know that they work also on a variety of psychedelics, including sometimes we have altered states when we do breath work. I mean, even PMS is a freaking altered state. But also like some of the deepest, like some of the full-on gods came down, altered states, I mean, from running or from breath work or from trance dance or from exercises in tantra workshops with shaking. So it doesn't even have to be necessarily from medicines. But in my experience, they apply for a variety of things. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, guys.